Well, it's now time we go straight to the dailies and see what they have for us for our review. Today we have about 7 papers as usual. We have the Punch, the Vanguard, the Guardian. We're having ThisDay newspapers as much as the Nation, Daily Trust, and Daily Sun. Let's see if we start with the Punch as usual. And on the Punch this morning, the lead story reads, the major one on the Punch this morning, Oyo Bronu adoption, Tarin casualty fears toll rescue mission. It's a major screamer, and riders to follow. That very leading story. Tarin holds firm, or rather, terrorists hold firm, insists on release of captured Ansaru commander and deputy. And I'll tell you to read up that story up on page 2. Let's see if we take some other leading story. Yes, federal government debt repayment exceed budget allocation by nearly 2 trillion naira. It's a major screamer on page 27. Power outrage. NERC orders compensation for B and A customers. We're talking about Band A rather, sorry, customers on page 28. 2027 INEC voids primaries hold after May 30th. It's also a screamer on page 41. And Dangote refinery ramps up to 700,000 barrels per day, strengthening Africa's energy landscape. And you can get that story up on page 28. But anyway, that's the much you can really take from the Punch, because the other one is more like remembering no order, but Pastor T.B. Joshua. And funny enough, it's 5 years on. Wow, 5 years. How time really flies. Well, that's the much you can take from the Punch.
Let's check out stories making rounds on The Guardian this morning. And on The Guardian newspaper, the leading story reads, how abuses, poor regulation fuel health crisis and economic losses rather, talking about World Environment Day, is on page 6. Still on the front page, NCDC urges government to boost Ebola prevention funding, is on page 3. State police framework almost ready for constitutional amendments. You can get more of that on page 2. Weekend works to Raki-led group for nominating Jonathan, is on page 3. And still on the front page, also can get more of the leading story. Next oil, FBN receiver Sulu Gambari hits the contempt of court risk sanction, is on page 25. Let's look and get more of the leading stories on the front page of the Guardian newspaper this morning. Nigeria finishes 5th as South Africa leads top performing African countries. While it's an interesting one on page 3, federal government screens 400 Nigerians for repatriation from South Africa, is on page 4. NERC orders discourse to compensate Band A customers over power supply shortfalls, is on page 30. Anxiety grows over insecurity as federal government ramps up rescue operation. You can get more of that on page 6. And let's quickly go to the picture of the day. And the picture of the day is that of the high cost of resource abuse, talking about Nigeria's environmental emergency, which is more like a supporter of the lead story. Well, that's what you can take on The Guardian this morning.
Let's quickly run to the Nation newspaper as we try to look at more that concerns the dailies this morning. And on the Nation newspaper, the lead story, always so interesting on the Nation, is State Police Joint Lawmakers Executive Panel concludes work. And riders to follow, Minister Nigeria must unite to fight terrorism as US affirms support. We're really excited about that support coming from the United States. Let's see if we take some other leading ones. Judiciary under siege as Suli Gambari hit with contempt, risks jail over Nest Oil defiance. I'll tell you to read more of that advertorial story up on page 3. Let's see if we take some other leading ones. Oyo House rejects negotiation with kidnappers. It's also a screamer on page 3 of the Nation. Elders Forum to Akpabio, stay clear of Kogi politics. And that warning is on page 3, but the picture of the day is that of troops of Operation Haidike destroying a terrorist camp after a clearance operation in Brno. And this was during the weekend. Well, that's the much you can take from the Nation newspaper.
Still on dailies, let's check out stories making it to the headline on ThisDay newspaper. And on ThisDay newspaper, the leading story reads, Federal government, kidnappers, terrorists aim to weaken national unity, undermine our institution. And riders to follow says terrorism has no tribe, religion, or political affiliation. ONSA declares security agencies relying on intelligence to rescue victims. UN demand immediate release of pupils and teachers and others. NHRC calls for justice and safer schools. NSCDC ship orders intelligence overhaul. And you can get more of that on page 8. Still on the front page, Tinubu has no answers to Nigeria's security crisis, says Akim Baba Ahmed, and that is on page 36. Disobedience of court in next oil case. FBN receiver Sulukambari slammed contempt notice, still on page 8. Last, we can get more of the leading stories still on the front page. Well, it seems to be a major one there on the front page. Shooks Okosho Michael Oluboje Olawale Linus Aleke, rather, in Abuja, and that's on page 8. And let's quickly go to the picture of the day. The picture of the day is that of the chairman, Coronation Group, and others during a meeting between the Coronation team and the commission in Abuja yesterday. Well, that's what you can take on this day newspaper this morning.
Let's run to the Daily Sun. Daily Sun is next for review as we x-ray on the papers together. And on the Daily Sun this morning, the lead story reads, it looks as if we're having really the sun on our mind. Security tightened around Aso Rock as Showere leads Abuja protest, demand release of kidnapped school children. And federal government not learning from past attacks, says Atiku. All of that you can get on page 6 of the Daily Sun. Let's see if we take some other leading stories, still on the front page of the Daily Sun. Fear grips schools over worsening insecurity as ANCOPS, NAPSS, NURT, others urge government to act fast to arrest situation. And you can read up that story up on page 6 of the Daily Sun. Stop attacking Adeboye over insecurity economy, Obi and Ekwesili charge Nigerians on page 6. AI reshaping security agencies' operations globally, says IG on page 4. Minority leader reps in rounded section as ministers clash or members clash over federal allegation. And you can get more of that allegation on page 8. International student groan as CBN restrict tuition payments to only $25,000 per semester. And you can understand all of that on page 25. But the picture of the day, the first one is human rights activist and African Action Congress presidential candidate Omoyele Sowore and others protesting adoption of school children in Oyo and other states as Aso Rock, Abuja yesterday. And picture 2 is traders of Jigbagi Market Ibadan demanding urgent intervention on the adoptions, all centered on the adoption of the Oyo school children. That's the much you can take from the Daily Sun.
I trust you're having a good time here on Dailies this morning as we quickly go to Daily Trust newspaper. And on the Daily Trust, seems to be a major one on the front page. And the Daily Trust, the leading story reads, parties sit on candidates' lists. And that story is on page 3 and 4 of the Daily Trust. And still on the front page of the Daily Trust this morning, security guards killed as bandits abduct 4 in Abuja is a disturbing one on page 16. Son allegedly kills father in Ondo State.
Wow. Quite really disturbing.
Really disturbing, and the sad one on page 17. 7 died as farmers' herders clash in Baoshi is on page 10. Seems to be having quite disturbing stories on Daily Trust this morning. And let's look and take one of the leading stories on the front page of the Daily Trust. And on the front page below the nameplates, constitutional framework for state police to be out soon, says presidencies on page 8. Despite rather session house yet to finalize on minority leadership. You can get more of that on page 11. Dangote refinery ramps up to 700,000 barrels per day, strengthening Africa's energy landscape. Is a story on page 21. And with that, let's quickly go to the picture of the day. And the picture of the day is that of Benga Hashim, promises 525 naira to dollar.
Wow.
Exchange rate. Well, draws massive crowd in Abuja. Well, with that, that's much you can take on the Daily Trust this morning.
Let's quickly run to the last paper for review, and that will definitely be the Vanguard. Well, the Vanguard is having a lot. And on the Vanguard this morning, federal government vows to crush kidnappers, rescue pupils in Oyo and Brunum. Riders to follow, launches offensive against terrorism, kidnapping others, says no child belongs in captivity. 386 terror convictions secured. There's 500 suspects facing trials. It reviews. Article lectures Tinubu over failure to learn from terrorist attack. But I'll tell you to get or learn more of that story up on page 5. Let's see if we take some other leading stories still on the front page of the Vanguard. CBN unveils new forest guideline, approves cash movement of $100,000 is on page 19. 2027, only Jonathan can speak on his own political future. Ex-President Camp insists on page 2. Obito youths don't expect Adeboye to champion change at 84 years. It's on page 9. Dangote refinery wraps up to 700,000 barrels per day, strengthening Africa's energy landscape. Is more of a major talk on page 19. Let's see if we take some other leading one, if any. Well, let's just go to Mr. and Mrs. column. Okay, no, let's take some few before we go there. Again, candidate write SSCE at night, parents lament. We are working to address the issue. Well, you'll be surprised. We're talking about insecurity and children are going home late after writing work. But anyway, we got that story up on page 26. United Nations demand immediate release of adopted Nigerian pupils and teachers is on page 4. State Police Presidency National Assembly IGP fine-tuned framework is on page 6. Ugo Chinyeri's minority leader nomination, G60 lawmaker dismisses forgery allegation, and you can get that on page 9. Well, let's really run to Mr. and Mrs. column, and as usual, Mr. will say, I said I'm going on a business trip. You prayed that God will protect me from kidnappers. And I said amen. Then you came back later to say, and side chicks, why are you like this? As a woman, definitely Mrs. will always answer. And Mrs. said, as far as I'm concerned, God will punish all of them, both side chick and kidnappers, because they are taking Oga's time. But anyway, the picture of the day is that of security operatives yesterday barricade all roads leading to the Eagle Square and Abuja venue of a planned protest calling for the rescue of the school children and teachers adopted in Oyo and Borno State. Well, that's the much you can take from the Vanguard and all papers put together. I will always say, if you find any of them truly enjoyable, well, why not go grab a copy of the papers and read it up? But I'll plead with you, don't do that now. Come on, still remain with us, because dialogue will take center stage next, right here on Viewpoint on Atlantic TV.